My tip here is lean into it and try not to stress too much. You can let them be the cookie manager and line up each shape. Now, I cannot guarantee you that every gingerbread man will still have his hands attached to the end of this, but I can guarantee you that it builds early maths and spatial skills. Hello, and welcome back to Demystifying Child's Play, the podcast where we take the mystery out of toddler play and help you feel more confident, calm, and connected as a parent. I'm Ruth Verco, and today we're talking about one of my absolute favourite topics, baking with your kids, but with a twist. Following on from last week, when we heard from Heather, who is the founder of Baking with Kids, we're going to explore the top 10 play schemas and how they show up in the kitchen while baking, specifically while making gingerbread, and how understanding these schemas can turn what might feel like chaos into joyful, meaningful play. And don't worry, I've created a free downloadable PDF that has my go-to gingerbread recipe and links each schema to simple, hands-on ways to bake together. And if you're a purist and think that gingerbread can only be baked at Christmas, have a think about when you go into a bakery and how many gingerbread men are there all year through. So I challenge you, even if it's not Christmas time, give it a go. You can grab this freebie at playschemas.com/free or by checking the show notes for this episode, playschemas.com/blog. So that's play, schemas.com, and then either /blog or /free. So let's get comfortable, whether you're out on a walk, catching a rare moment of quiet, or multitasking around the house. Let's dive in and explore baking through the schemas. Now, I've had a lot of guests on recently as I've been welcoming our new baby into the mix, and I've more lined up after this episode, which I'm super excited about. But with that being said, if you're new here, you might be wondering, what on earth are play schemas? Play schemas are simply patterns of repeated behavior that young children naturally explore as they develop. They're how kids make sense of their world, how they build skills, and how they express their curiosity. And when we, as parents, learn to spot these schemas, everything clicks. That tipping over of the flour, it's not just a mess, it's the trajectory play in action. That endless stirring, it's the rotation schema. And when you see it for what it is, you can support their learning and, most importantly, keep your cool. Okay, that being said, let's jump straight into it and break it down schema by schema while imagining we're in the kitchen making gingerbread. And if you're getting thirsty to make gingerbread with your little ones after this, make sure you let me know. I'm on Instagram at play_schemas, and I always love a good DM. Okay, first of the top 10 play schemas, so buckle up, but do remember, you don't need to remember this all. I've got that free download. The number one, trajectory. This is all about exploring movement and motion, pouring, dropping, throwing. You can probably imagine this already. So for an example, your toddler might love tipping in the flour or watching the sugar fall as a stream into the bowl. So instead of getting frustrated, hand them a cup and a spoon and say, can you pour this into the bowl slowly? Giving them a safe way to explore motion keeps them engaged and keeps most of the flour off the floor. I always do this when I'm baking with my kids, is rather than getting them to scoop a whole cup of flour out, which is actually quite tricky, I'll put the cup generally in the flour container and give them a tablespoon, and they can put it in one by one, and they can do it slowly, and they can do it higher, lower, watching it going in. So really easy to do, and it keeps them engaged, and it keeps, as I've said, more flour off the floor and in the bowl where it's meant to go. Number two, the transportation schema. This is moving items from one place to another. It's when kids want to carry, shift, and move things around. For example, you might have just got the measuring spoons out, and then your child takes them, puts them somewhere else, and puts them somewhere else again. Or they might want to carry the gingerbread cutters from the bench to the table over and over again. So what you could do is give them a job with this transporting. So you give them their own little basket to transport some of the items, or let them be in charge of carrying the ingredients from the pantry to the bench and back again. Number three is the rotation schema. Spinning, twisting, turning. The rotation schema is all about fascination with circles, spins, and twists. So I think you can see where this is going. This is being able to stir the batter around and around, or twisting the cookie cutter in the dough. So what you can do here is hand over the spoon and say, you're in charge of stirring. Simple as that. It not only feeds a schema, but it builds fine motor skills. And the good thing with gingerbread is that you can't overstir it, and you can also roll it into logs as you're in the kneading phase too. Gingerbread is a very forgiving mix, so you can work with it as long as you want so that they can have all that time doing the rotation schema, and they can feel that sense of achievement, being the one who was able to stir and able to do it their way. Number four, orientation. This is looking at the world from different angles. Kids exploring orientation love flipping things upside down or lying on the floor to watch things. So for example, they might be able to crouch down low to see the dough being rolled out so they can see it from a different angle. Or they might like to tilt their head sideways as they look into the oven to watch the cookies bake. What you can do is you can narrate what they're seeing. You can see the cookies puffing up from that angle. Or, wow, how thick is it? Do you think I need to go thinner or do I need to go thicker? You're putting all this language naturally into your play and into your baking. Okay, number 5 is the positioning schema. This is organizing and lining things up. The positioning schema is all about arranging items in order, which I've said before is not always an order you think, it's an order that they think. As they get more mature in their thinking, they'll have more logical orders, but especially as they're younger, anything goes, and that's okay. So for example, your little one might take all of the cookie cutters and line them up in a perfect row before you can use them. Or they might want to be the ones lifting the cookie dough onto the tray. Now, my tip here is lean into it and try not stress too much. You can let them be the cookie manager and line up each shape. Now, I cannot guarantee you that every gingerbread man will still have his hands attached to the end of this, but I can guarantee you that it builds early maths and spatial skills, all this learning embedded straight into baking. And I hope you're already noticing that through the first 5 that I've shared, as everything I'm sharing is not something that's a new, wow, I didn't think of doing that. It's actually just embedding natural practices of baking into what you're doing, but being aware of what your child's schema is. Because the more you're aware, the more you can lean into it, the more you can stress less, and the more your child can actually feel involved and encouraged and want to do it. And if you listen to the last week's podcast, which if you haven't, I highly recommend you do, where Heather shares her top 5 tips about baking with children. One thing that goes over and over again is just giving a bit more time and knowing that the more they do it, the easier it will become because they're learning these skills. Okay, number 6, we're going to transformation, which is mixing, changing, and experimenting. So transformation is all about the changing states and experimenting with cause and effect. So this is with any type of baking. What you're doing is you're watching the wet and dry ingredients come together to make something new. Or when you're decorating the cookies, it was flat and now there might be some bumps and some different things on it. Or you might see colours blend of using colouring. And what you can do is talk through the changes, as I'm all about talking through the play. See how the butter melts when it's warmed. This builds early scientific skills, thinking, and keeps them curious and engaged. Number 7 is the connection schema. This is joining things together. It's when children explore how things link or stick together. For example, connecting pieces of dough, sticking on decorations like the buttons, or as they see the mixture come together into that one ball. And this is where the schemas overlap. You can have some quite clear ones like the rotation schema, just being able to mix over and over again, and they just want to keep mixing and keep going and they don't want to stop. But there can be ones that you can see cross over really well as well, which is amazing. So what you can do is you can encourage it again with phrases that put them in the driver's seat, being able to design their cookies and watch their faces light up, saying, you can choose how you do this cookie. I really want to see. After connection, I always put disconnection because they go hand in hand, but they are very different because pulling things apart is quite different to connecting, especially if you've got kids in these different schemas. So you can get them to pull apart some dough scraps. It could be breaking a cookie in half to see what's inside. It could be the cutting the butter. So anything where they can disconnect something. And here, try your very best to hold some of those thoughts if you need to. And rather than correcting them saying they're doing something wrong, frame it as exploration. If they're really wanting to just pull apart the dough before you're able to get any of those cookies in, offer them some extra scraps just for pulling apart and pinching. Or maybe you could have gingerbread that doesn't actually look like cookie cutter shapes. It could be the scraps on the edges. It's how they want their cookie to look. It would taste the same, look a bit different, but that is fine. I'm all about leaning into what your child wants to do in the baking because we're all about promoting these memory-making experiences through play. Okay, getting near the end, we've got enclosure. Enclosure is about creating boundaries. It's when children love to create borders or fill spaces. For example, pressing the cookie cutter into the dough to fill the whole shape, or maybe icing around the edge of a cookie and then putting sprinkles on. They're enclosing the shape. So what you can do is you can provide them shapes and let them focus on filling them carefully. It's great for concentration. And then number 10, very close to this one, is enveloping, which is covering or hiding. It's all about that wrapping and covering things. So for example, while you're working with the dough, you could hide a small cookie cutter inside and see what's in there. Or you're imagining these cookies that are perfect little eyes with 3 buttons and maybe something on their shoes, but your child is just obsessed with trying to cover it all with icing and sprinkles. This is part of the enveloping schema. Lean into it. You could celebrate it by saying, wow, you've completely covered that star. It's a secret cookie now. Remember, when you know these schemas, it's a lot easier to lean in and see the why behind what your child is doing rather than just thinking they're being really greedy. They want all the icing. Maybe they have clicked the more icing they get on, the more they eat. But it could just be that they want to envelop it. Now, remember, after listening through these top 10, you don't need to remember them all. Head to playschemas.com/free for all of it. When we understand schemas, we stop seeing naughty behavior and we start leaning in and seeing learning in action, which means less frustration in the moment, more connection with your child, and the bonus is baking feels fun instead of stressful. Schemas give you that language and understanding to share what's going on. So the next time your partner asks you why there's flour on the floor, you can say, that was the trajectory schema, completely normal. Now, if you're all enthused, but you're not sure what your next steps are, what I'd love for you to do after this episode is bake something together. Gingerbread is perfect, and notice one schema in action, and then name it out loud to your child to celebrate the exploration of the world around them. So you're not going to say, oh, I can see you doing the trajectory schema, but you might say, wow, I can see how you're tipping that so carefully and it's staying inside the bowl. Great job. Even something as simple as that, you're pouring so carefully, builds connection. And don't forget to grab your free printable guide with all the schemas linked to baking activities at playschemas.com/free. Now, if you love this episode and you want more schema-friendly ideas, come and join me over on Instagram at play_schemas. That's play, SCHEMAS. And remember, today is a great day to play and to bake. Have fun.